There is probably a small brown bottle sitting in your medicine cabinet right now. It costs almost nothing, yet it is one of the most overlooked tomato growing tools you can use. I am talking about ordinary 3% hydrogen peroxide. After more than 25 years of growing tomatoes, I can tell you this household liquid can replace many expensive sprays, drenches, seed treatments, and disinfectants sold at garden centers. Today I will show you 9 practical uses, from seed starting to post-harvest storage. Stay with me because benefit number 5, what peroxide can do for dying tomato roots, is one of the most important lessons here. Before we begin, drop your U.S. state or USDA growing zone in the comments. Now let us get into the chemistry. Tomato seeds have a tough, protective outer coat. In nature, that coat helps the seeds survive cold, drought, and unpredictable conditions. But when you are indoors in February trying to start expensive seeds under grow lights, that same coat can slow everything down. Hydrogen peroxide helps because it does 2 things at once. First, it softens the seed coat just enough for moisture to enter faster and more evenly. Second, as peroxide breaks down, it releases oxygen directly around the seed. Oxygen is one of the signals that tells a dormant seed it is time to wake up. Here's the simple method. Mix 1 teaspoon of standard 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of warm water. Place your tomato seeds in that solution for 30 minutes. Do not use hot water and do not soak them for hours. After 30 minutes, rinse the seeds briefly with plain water, then plant them in your seed starting mix. In my garden, this method often speeds germination by 2 to 5 days compared with plain water soaking. For gardeners in short-season climates, those few days can matter. They can be the difference between ripe fruit in late summer and green tomatoes still hanging when frost arrives. This works across heirlooms, paste tomatoes, slicers, and disease-resistant hybrids. The peroxide does not care whether the seed is Cherokee Purple, San Marzano, Brandywine, Celebrity, or Mountain Fresh. The chemistry is the same. It simply helps water and oxygen reach the seed faster. The seed soak does something else that many gardeners never think about. It helps sanitize the surface of the seed. If you save tomato seeds from your own garden, those seeds can carry microscopic fungal spores and bacteria on their outer coat. That does not mean you did anything wrong. It is normal biology. Seeds develop inside wet fruit, and wet fruit is a perfect place for microbes to live. Even commercial seed can sometimes carry problems. When those seeds go into warm, moist seed starting mix, the same conditions that help germination can also activate those hidden pathogens. Suddenly, disease spreads across a tray before the seedlings even develop their first true leaves. The same solution from benefit number 1, 1 teaspoon of 3% peroxide in 1 cup of warm water, acts as a surface disinfectant. The peroxide oxidizes fungal spores and bacteria sitting on the seed coat. It works on the outside where the problem is without damaging the living embryo inside when used correctly. Think of it as a 30-minute cleaning bath for your seeds. This is especially useful if you save seed from tomatoes grown near early blight, septoria leaf spot, or other foliar diseases. Is it a perfect guarantee? No, nothing in gardening is, but it dramatically reduces the starting pathogen load before the seed ever enters the soil. That is disease prevention before the disease even has a chance to begin. If you have ever started a tray of tomato seedlings and found them collapsed at the soil line, as if someone cut them with scissors, you have seen damping off. Damping off is caused by aggressive soil organisms such as Pythium, Rhizoctonia, and Fusarium. They thrive in warm, wet, oxygen-poor conditions. The cruel part is that these are often the same conditions home gardeners create when they overwater seed trays. Garden centers will gladly sell you a fungicide drench. Some of those products can work, but the real issue is usually not just the presence of fungus. The real problem is wet, stagnant, oxygen-depleted growing medium. Hydrogen peroxide helps by reoxygenating that root zone. For tiny seedlings, use a very light mix. About 1 and 1 or 2 teaspoons of 3% hydrogen peroxide per gallon of water. Use it as a supplemental watering treatment about once a week during the seedling stage, especially if your trays stay wet too long or if you have had damping off in past seasons. Do not drench every day. Do not treat this like regular water. The goal is to improve the environment, not sterilize the soil. When peroxide breaks down, It releases oxygen into the growing medium. That favors young tomato roots and makes life harder for the anaerobic organisms that cause damping off. Healthy, fast-growing roots are always your best defense. This treatment gives them a cleaner, better oxygenated start. Transplant shock is real, but many gardeners accept too much of it as unavoidable. A tomato seedling raised indoors has lived in a protected world. Steady moisture, calm air, gentle light, and stable temperatures. Then one day it is moved outside into sun, wind, fluctuating temperatures, and unfamiliar soil. The roots are disturbed, water uptake slows, photosynthesis drops, and the plant may sit still for a week or two. You can reduce that shock with a simple peroxide root treatment. Before planting, mix 2 tablespoons of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 gallon of water. Soak the transplant root ball in that solution for about 15 minutes, or pour a generous amount into the planting hole just before setting the plant in place. What you are doing is flooding the immediate root zone with oxygen at the most stressful moment in the plant's life. Damaged root cells need oxygen to recover. New roots need oxygen to establish contact with the surrounding soil. The peroxide also helps reduce certain microbial problems in the planting hole that could stress the young plant further. I have used this method for years. Treated transplants often settle faster and begin pushing new green growth within a week. The difference is especially noticeable when other plants nearby sit pale, limp, and frozen in place for 2 weeks. It is not magic. It is oxygen, timing, and chemistry. Do not skip it. At this point, we have covered seed germination, seed sanitation, damping off, and transplant shock. If this is new information, ask yourself, where else are you getting practical, chemistry-based gardening advice like this? Probably not from the garden center employee selling a $22 fungicide, sponsored posts, pushing branded products, or generic videos that show pretty tomatoes without explaining why anything works. This channel exists because serious gardeners deserve practical information, not marketing fluff. Subscribe now if you want advice you can actually use. And now we are reaching the most important point of the entire video. Root rot is not a minor problem. In many tomato gardens, it is a death sentence. When roots sit in waterlogged, oxygen-starved soil, they begin to suffocate. Heavy clay, poor drainage, overwatering, compacted beds, or weeks of rain can create the perfect conditions. As roots weaken, anaerobic bacteria and water mold pathogens such as Pythium and Phytophthora move in and destroy living tissue. Healthy white roots turn brown, then black, then mushy. Once that happens, the plant cannot take up water or nutrients properly. The confusing part is that the plant wilts above ground. It looks thirsty. So many gardeners water even more, which makes the oxygen problem worse and speeds up the rot. If you catch the problem early enough, hydrogen peroxide can help. For a rescue drench, mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of water. This is stronger than the preventive seedling mix. Slowly pour it around the base of the affected plant, working outward toward the drip line. Pour slowly so it penetrates the root zone instead of running across the surface. When peroxide contacts organic matter in the soil, it breaks down and releases reactive oxygen. That oxygen attacks certain anaerobic microbes and fungal organisms on contact while also flooding the suffocating root zone with oxygen. This can buy the plant time. If enough living root tissue remains, you may see improvement in 3 to 5 days. Apply it once, then wait 48 hours before judging the plant. If you feel a second treatment is necessary, wait a full week. Do not apply strong peroxide drenches every day. Your goal is to restore balance, not turn the soil into a dead chemical zone. I have saved full-size tomato plants in July using this method. Plants I was ready to pull, plants already carrying green fruit. Do not give up on a wilting tomato without trying this protocol first. Fungus gnats are not just annoying little flies around seed trays and containers. The adult flies are mostly harmless, but their larvae live in the moist top layer of soil and feed on fine root hairs. In seedlings and container tomatoes, that damage can stunt growth and increase the risk of root disease. To target the larvae, mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of water. Drench the top inch or 2 of infested soil. You will see fizzing as peroxide reacts with organic matter. That oxygen release is harsh on soft-bodied fungus gnat larvae. Within a short time, peroxide breaks down into water and oxygen, leaving no lasting toxic residue. For above-ground pests like aphids and spider mites, use a lighter foliar spray, 2 teaspoons of 3% peroxide per 1 cup of water. Spray the undersides of leaves where aphids gather and spider mite eggs are often found. The oxidative action irritates soft-bodied pests, disrupts their protective coating, and can kill eggs on contact. Apply only in early morning or late evening. Never spray in hot midday sun. 1 or 2 thorough applications spaced about 3 days apart can reduce moderate infestations without leaving oily residue on leaves or toxic residue on fruit. Most products marketed as fungicides are mainly preventive. They form a barrier on the leaf before fungal spores establish. But many gardeners do not spray until they already see early blight, septoria leaf spot, powdery mildew, rust, or spreading lesions. That is why so many people feel like store-bought sprays do not work. Often, the timing is wrong. The product was designed to prevent infection, not reverse an infection that is already active. Hydrogen peroxide is different because it can create an oxidative burst on contact. When sprayed directly onto infected tissue, the released oxygen attacks active fungal spores and living fungal structures. For this curative use, mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of water. Spray affected leaves thoroughly, especially the undersides. You may see slight whitening on the most damaged areas. That is the oxidative reaction. At this concentration, healthy tomato tissue is usually not harmed when applied correctly. Use this spray every 5 to 7 days while disease pressure remains active. Combine it with smart gardening practices. Remove the worst infected lower leaves, prune for airflow, avoid wet foliage when possible, and mulch the soil to prevent fungal spores from splashing upward during rain. This is not a miracle cure for a plant already swallowed by blight. If 2/3 of the plant is gone, no spray will rebuild it. But when used early or mid-stage, peroxide is one of the cheapest curative tools you can use. For humid zones, especially zones 7 through 10, this can make a real difference with disease-prone heirlooms like Brandywine, Cherokee purple, and large beefsteak types. If you have spent years watching tomato plants collapse from blight, pests, root rot, and mystery diseases, this channel is for you. This is for gardeners who want to spend less, understand more, and harvest more from the work they put in. Think of one neighbor, friend, or family member who grows tomatoes and fights these same battles. Send them this video. You might save them money, frustration, and maybe an entire season. Your pruners, stakes, cages, pots, and trays are not just dirty after a season. They can carry fungal spores, bacteria, and disease organisms from last year's infected plants. That is one way disease returns year after year. A tomato cage that held blighted foliage last summer can carry spores into spring. Pruners used on one infected plant can move disease to the next plant in seconds. Bleach works as a disinfectant, but it is harsh, corrosive, irritating, and must be rinsed carefully. Hydrogen peroxide gives you a simpler option. For tools and hard surfaces, use standard 3% peroxide straight from the bottle. No dilution is needed. Spray or wipe pruning shears, stakes, trays, and container surfaces. Let the surface stay wet for 10 to 15 minutes, then rinse or let it dry. On metal, plastic, and wood, there is no living leaf tissue to burn, so full-strength 3% peroxide is appropriate. It kills many surface pathogens, then breaks down into water and oxygen without toxic fumes or heavy residue. Keep a small spray bottle of 3% peroxide with you while pruning tomatoes. Wipe or spray your shears between plants, especially when removing diseased leaves. It takes seconds, but it can stop you from turning your own tool into a disease delivery system. Now we need to be very clear about safety and concentration. All the ratios in this video are based on standard 3% drugstore hydrogen peroxide. That is the brown bottle sold almost everywhere for about $1 or $2. When I say 1 tablespoon per cup of water, I mean 3% peroxide. Do not casually substitute 35% food-grade peroxide. That is a strong professional chemical. It can burn skin, bleach tissue, and severely damage plants if mishandled. The average home gardener does not need it. Standard 3% peroxide is cheap, available, and strong enough for these uses. If leaves show minor bleaching after a foliar spray, one of two things likely happen. You sprayed in direct midday sun, or your mix was too strong. Apply in early morning or evening, and when in doubt, dilute more. Also remember that peroxide loses strength over time, especially after the bottle is opened and exposed to heat, light, and air. Store it in a cool, dark place and use fresh bottles each season. An old bottle from a hot garage may be mostly water, and never mix hydrogen peroxide with vinegar in the same spray bottle. Together, they can form peracetic acid, which is more corrosive and dangerous to plant tissue. Use them separately on different days and never in a sealed container together. Many gardeners think the job ends once the tomato is picked, but a harvested tomato is still biologically active, and its skin can carry bacteria and fungi from the garden, your hands, baskets, counters, and storage surfaces. Those invisible microbes often cause soft spots, watery patches, and early rot. You can slow that process with a simple post-harvest peroxide wash. Mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 gallon of cool, clean water. Submerge freshly harvested tomatoes for 30 minutes. Then remove them and let them air dry completely on a clean towel before storage. The peroxide kills many surface microbes before they begin breaking down the fruit. This can extend the usable life of a big tomato harvest by several days, which matters when 30 or 40 tomatoes ripen at once. Do not refrigerate tomatoes unless they are already fully ripe, and you only need to slow them for a short time. Cold temperatures below about 55 degrees can damage flavor and texture. A clean, peroxide-washed tomato stored at room temperature will often taste better and last longer than one thrown straight into the refrigerator. You grew those tomatoes from seed to harvest. Every fruit that rots before you use it represents lost time, water, soil amendments, and effort. This wash is the final step in protecting the harvest you worked so hard to grow. After more than 25 years of gardening, what frustrates me most is the gap between what home gardeners need to know and what they are usually sold. Walk into a garden center and you will find expensive products for seed disease, transplant shock, root rot, pests, foliar fungus, tool sanitation, and post-harvest washing. Some work, but many of these problems also have a simple solution inside a cheap brown bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide. This is not about calling every commercial product a scam. It is about understanding the chemistry before spending money you may not need to spend. If you are still watching and have not subscribed, hit that button now, then drop your USDA zone or US state in the comments. Tell me which benefits surprised you most. Did you know about the seed soak? Had you heard of the root rot rescue drench? Have you tried peroxide before? Share your experience because those comments help other gardeners months from now. You deserve strong green plants, heavy cages, clean fruit, and fewer expensive bottles on the shelf. Get a fresh brown bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide, use it correctly, and get back to work. I will see you in the next one.